We continue now at the top of Daf Samech Aleph Amud Aleph in Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 61a. And the previous Amud, the Gemara brought a brisa which learns two things with regards to serving avodah zarah. First, we learn from the idea of zvicha, slaughtering an animal as a sacrifice for the avodah zarah. That is prohibited, and we learn from there. Not only is that prohibited, but any kind of avodah which would be done in the Beis Hamikdash to serve Hakadosh Baruch Hu, let's say for example nisuch, let's say libations. If you do that to an avodah zarah as well, that is also going to carry the death penalty. That's what we learn from zvicha, from slaughtering, from sacrificing to an avodah zarah. And then the other thing that we learn in the brisa is hishtachava, when it comes to bowing to an avodah zarah, even if that is not the way to normally serve that avodah zarah, but the pasuk tells us that that is also considered to be a way of serving the avodah zarah that carries the death penalty. And the Gemara asks on the previous Zamad, why can't we just reverse it? Why can't we say that actually when it comes to hishtachava, so there anything similar to hishtachava is going to carry the death penalty? Let's say hugging the avodah zarah, kissing the avodah zarah, anything that's a respectable, that's showing respect towards the avodah zarah. Maybe that's what hishtachava is teaching. And maybe when it talks about zvicha, so maybe there it's talking just specifically about zvicha and saying, let's say a person were to slaughter the animal, not to serve the avodah zarah, but to later do something to serve the avodah zarah. He's going to burn the innards of the animal for the avodah zarah. So maybe that the pasuk is trying to teach that even that kind of zvicha, that kind of slaughtering, sacrificing of the animal, is going to carry the death penalty by avodah zarah. And the Gemara now is continuing and bringing exactly this case where we have a machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Let's say a person does exactly this, slaughters an animal, but not for avodah zarah, but it's with the intention of later burning parts of the animal for the avodah zarah. So Rabbi Yochanan says asura, the animal actually becomes prohibited in terms of getting benefit from the animal. Reish Lakish Amar mutaras, but Reish Lakish says that the animal is still mutter. Rashi explains asura habehema behana. Rabbi Yochanan is saying that the animal is now asur, you can't get benefit. Even though the actual slaughtering of the animal was not for avodah zarah. Even if you don't eventually go on to sprinkle the blood for avodah zarah, for example, it would still be asur. And we learn this out in Shchitas Chulin. The Gomer Rabbi Yochanan mimachshavas pigel. Rabbi Yochanan learns this out from the concept of pigel, where you're having the wrong machshava when you're doing something in the Beis Hamikdash to have a me'avoda li'avoda. There you're going from one avoda to another and having the wrong machshava. For example, let's say a person shechts the animal al menas lizrok es adam, on the condition to sprinkle the blood l'mocher the next day, which is not supposed to be. So that's pigel, that's called pigel, and so we apply that over here as well. And then Reish Lakish Amar mutaris, Reish Lakish says that the animal is mutter lo yolef chutz mipnim, because he doesn't learn out things that happen outside of the mikdash from that which we do in the mikdash. Ein mechashrin me'avoda le'avoda. He doesn't learn out that idea of, again, ein mechashrin me'avoda le'avoda. He doesn't learn that out to avodah zarah. So that's a machlokas amoraim in terms of the animal. And the Gemara now explains its question. Hanicha Rabbi Yochanan. So this would actually work out according to Rabbi Yochanan. Rashi explains, Hanicha hadem miyaser lan zoveach lelamid halaklal. The idea that we're using zoveach in the pasuk to teach us a general rule that any kind of worship of avodah zarah that is something you would do in the Beis Hamikdash is aser, that actually all works out according to Rabbi Yochanan. V'lo mukminon lo haidrasha lomar shemechashev me'avoda li'avoda. And we're not going to use, like we asked on the previous Amud, the question was, why not say that what we're doing with zvicha is to say that zvicha is prohibited even if it's a situation of avoda li'avoda. Again, you're doing the zvicha to do some other avoda that you're going to do for the avodah zarah. It makes sense that we wouldn't need the pasuk for that. Hanichel Rabbi Yochanan, that's good according to Rabbi Yochanan. You don't need the pasuk for that. Why? Because you can learn it out the same way he's learning out that the animal is asur b'hana. You'd also learn out machshava lemachshava from pigel. If you have a source for avoda li'avoda, just like you have a source that the animal is asur b'hana, you also have a source that the person is chayiv. And so then again, the pasuk which talks about zoveach is going to be extra, and therefore we can use it and apply it and say that anything that's done in the Beis Hamikdash that you do for an avodah zarah is asur. Not only asur, but carries the death penalty. But Reish Lakish, who has no source from pigel for avodah zarah, so now we're back to our question. Maybe zoveach is to teach us this chiddush that there's this concept that even if you're doing it with a machshava from one avodah to the other, still it's going to be problematic. So again, hanichel Rabbi Yochanan, this is good according to Rabbi Yochanan. Ela l'Reish Lakish boikra, but according to Reish Lakish, we need a pasuk, and maybe that's what the pasuk is for. And the Gemara continues, Maskav l'Rapapa. Rapapa asks on this. We can even say according to Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan lo boikra. According to Rabbi Yochanan, a pasuk is not needed. Ad kan lo kaser Rabbi Yochanan ela behema. Again, Rabbi Yochanan only prohibited the actual animal. You can't get benefit from the animal by avoda li avoda, by mechashrin me avoda li avoda by avoda zara. Aval gavra lo bar katolahu, but we don't know that the person is going to get the death penalty. V'yasakra l'chiyuvei gavra l'ktolah. So even for Rabbi Yochanan, we could ask the question that maybe the pasuk is coming to say that the person is chayiv the death penalty in a case of mechashrin me avoda li avoda by avoda zara. So again, we're still back to the question. Maskiv la Rav Acha Brei Ravika, and Rav Acha Brei Ravika, he asked the question the other way. Reish Lakish mi baikra. Is that really true? According to Reish Lakish, is it so clear that we need a pasuk to say the death penalty by mechashrin me avoda li avoda? Maybe adkan lo kashar Reish Lakish. Maybe Reish Lakish only permitted ela behema. Maybe Reish Lakish only said the animal is permitted. Aval gavra bar katalahu, but maybe the person actually does carry the death penalty for the person in this situation. Midi dahave amishtachav elahar, and we could give a proof to that because it's similar to someone who bows to a mountain. Dahar mutter, because when a person bows to a mountain to serve the mountain, which is part of the ground, is still going to be mutter, that you can't say that you don't derive benefit from that. Va'ovda b'sayif, but you still find that the person who serves, who worships, that person is going to get the death penalty of sayif, of beheading, and so you find that that's true. So maybe according to Reish Lakish also, one can say that the pasuk actually is needed that the pasuk is actually not needed rather for this, and maybe we would understand when it comes to the person that the death penalty would apply. And Rashi explains ha'ovdei kochavim ha'ovdei nesaharim, when you have idol worshippers who worship the mountains. Tanya Meseches avodah zara, we learn in the Bryce in Meseches avodah zara, haharim mutarin bahana, that the mountains are actually mutter, you can get benefit from. Techsiv Elohim al harim, it says the gods are on the mountains. V'lo harim Elohim, it's not that the mountains can really become the gods. V'yovdeim b'sayif, but those who worship them do get the death penalty by the sword. Afagav de mechuber, even though it's attached to the ground. Lo mitzar avodas kochavim, and therefore that which is attached to the ground doesn't become prohibited as an idol. Miyahavit, but still, nevertheless, again, we're going to say that it does carry the death penalty. And so the point over here is v'hachanami, here also lo boikra. Maybe you don't need a pasuk to teach us this idea that avoda li avoda is going to carry the death penalty. Ho'elu shchita tzorech zrikahi, since the slaughtering is needed in order to do the sprinkling of the blood. V'chasha b'shchita al menas lizrok, and that's what he had in mind when he did the shchita in order to sprinkle the blood. Havalei kovad avodas kochavim. Maybe it's obvious that that's like serving avodah zara. Da zrika below shchita lo sagi. You can't sprinkle the blood without shchita. Hilkach al karchach. Therefore, again, ihishtachavo lelamid ala klal nafkalei. If hishtachavo was teaching us this general rule, that was the one that says anything like hishtachavo. Lo havalei lemichtav zovech. So again, zovech would not need to be written, and that can be an answer to this question. And the Gemara continues. Amar le Rav Acha mi Difti le Ravino. Rav Acha from Difti said to Ravino, Lemay deka amar le Rava bar Rav Chanan li Abaya. According to that which Rava bar Rav Chanan said to Abaya, that was on the previous summit. He's the one that asked this original question we were dealing with, and he had said, Ema, he said, let us suggest that Yotza hishtachavo lelamid ala klal kulo. Again, maybe the reason why bowing is specified is to say a general rule that any respectable form of worshiping the avodah zara, we should suggest that all would carry the death penalty. Again, that was part of his question. But if you would suggest that, so Eicha Yavdu lemu'utei mai, the pasuk of Eicha Yavdu, what would that come to exclude? And the idea over here is that Eicha Yavdu, it means that the service is the way that the non-Jews actually serve that particular idol. That pasuk seems to be saying that in order to get the death penalty for serving avodah zara, you have to serve in the way that avodah zara is normally served. That seems to be excluding something. Now, it wouldn't be excluding bowing or anything similar to bowing, so what would it be excluding? V'chitaiman, if you're going to say lemu'utei hapoer atzmo lazovchim, if you're going to say it comes to exclude, let's say somebody would defecate in front of an idol which normally is served through sacrifices, so you don't need the pasuk for that. Mehishtachavon nafka, that already would be learned out from bowing, because that's not something that's respectable. Mahishtachavod derech kibbud, just like bowing is something that is a form of showing respect to the avodah zara. I've called derech kibbud, so too it has to be derech kibbud. You have to be showing respect, showing honor to the avodah zara. So we already know to exclude that. So if you're going to say again that hishtachavo includes this whole category, what is Eicha Yavdu coming to exclude? And the Gemara says, Ella, rather you could say like this, lemu'ute, it could be excluding hapoer atzmo lemarkulis. Let's say somebody defecates in front of Markulis. Markulis was worshipped by throwing stones at it. Some say Markulis translated as Mercury. One might have thought, Hoel va'avodaso bizdayon hu, since the way you serve Markulis is in this way that's really a disgraceful kind of thing. You're throwing stones at it. So you might have thought, af kol bizayon. So you might have thought any way of serving in that way that's a bizayon is considered service, even defecating. And so Kamash Malan, that's what it could be. The pasuk is saying that's not the normal way to serve it, and therefore that is not included. But the Gemara continues and asks, Elahadam Rabbi Elazar, but according to that which Rabbi Elazar says, Minayin lezoveach behema lemarkulas shu chayev. How do we know if somebody sacrifices an animal to markulas that he's chayev? Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, v'lo yizbechu od esezivchayim laseirim. It says that you shouldn't sacrifice any further. It's talking about avodah zara. Now imeino inyan lechedarka. Now it can't be talking. We can't apply this pasuk to serving the avodah zara in the normal way it's served. Techsiv echa yavdu. We already know that from the pasuk of echa yavdu, as we said. So teneyu inyan l'shalo kedarka, so you should apply it to shalo kedarka. That's what the pasuk is talking about. And so therefore, again, you see, if you sacrifice an animal to markulis, Rabbi Elazar says you're chayiv. That's a shalo kedarka form of service, and you're chayiv in that situation. Now the problem is, if you're going to say, again, according to the premise that we had earlier, according to the premise of the question on the previous amud, that hishtachavo and anything similar to that is going to be included and carry the death penalty. So shalo kedarka me hishtachavo nafka. Again, you have the same question. That shalo kedarka, if you do something respectable, but it's shalo kedarka, we're really learning that out from hishtachava. So why are we now bringing a different pasuk of alo yizbechu od? And the Gemara says, no, hasam over there, bezoveach lahachis. There we're talking about a situation where the person is sacrificing not in order to serve the avodah zara. You can have a situation where the person is sacrificing just to anger HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That we need a separate source for, and that's why we have two sources for this idea. And Rashi explains that that which Rabbi Elazar said, that how do you know that if you sacrifice an animal, she avodas covered la markulis, that actually would be a respectable way of serving markulis. Shavodas bizayin, normally you serve the markulis in a disgraceful way. Vuadin la por, and the same thing would be true also by the por, which is normally served in a disgraceful manner. Imisa l'Rava bar Rav Chanin, if what Rava bar Rav Chanin said is correct, sheishtachavo melamedes al aklal, that hishtachavo teaches us a general rule that any respectable form of service is going to carry the death penalty. Lamali haikra. So what would we need this pasuk for? Lahachi, for this purpose. Again, mishtachavo nafka. We should learn it out from hishtachavo. What do you need this pasuk, this source of lo yizbechu odes ivcheim laseirim? And so then the Gemara said you need it lezoveach lahachis. Let's say you have a situation where he's sacrificing just to anger HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'eno miskavin lekavlo ola below. He's not thinking that he wants this idol to be his god. V'yashminan kra to over belav. That's why we have this pasuk to teach that there's a transgression with a negative commandment in this situation. And the Gemara continues, Rav Hamnuna irchasu leitore. Rav Hamnuna, he lost some of his oxen, he went to look for them. Pagabe Rabba, he met up with Rabba, and Ramale masnisan hadadi, and Rabba said for him a contradiction between Mishnayos. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, ha'oved avodas kochavim, it says if one worships avodah zara, it carries the death penalty. So oved in omer lo, it sounds like he has to actually worship. It's not enough simply to say that he's going to worship the avodah zara. But the following contradiction, va'anan tanan, but then we also learn in the Mishnah, ha'omer evod, if a person says I'm going to worship, or Eilech ve'evod, I'm going to go and worship, Neilech v'navod, let's go and worship, so that also is enough. So it seems to be a contradiction. So Amar Leiser Rav Hamnuna said back to him, Ba'omer eini mekablo olai ela ba'avod. If the person says that I'm only accepting it upon myself as a god when I worship it, so then you have to actually worship. But otherwise, if a person simply states something which says that he's accepting this idol as a god, that already would be enough. And the Gemara continues, Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef says, Tanoi shakalt me'alma, you're just grabbing Tanoim from nowhere. Tanoi, this is actually machlokas Tanoim, this issue that's being raised. The Tanya, because we learned in a brisa, ha'omer bo va'evduni, let's say a person says, come and serve me, he wants himself to be the idol, that they should worship him. Rabbi Meir mechayev, v'Rabbi Yehuda poter. Rabbi Meir says chayev in such a situation, and Rabbi Yehuda says poter. And the Gemara explains, heichad de polchu, now in a situation where they actually go ahead and worship, so kuli alma lo pligi, there's no machlokas, techsiv, because it's written, lo sasel chapesel, it says you can't make for yourself an idol. There certainly the person would be chayiv if they actually worship this individual. Ki pligi, what's the machlokas tanoim that we have between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda over here? B'dibura b'alma, isn't it exactly this case where the person simply said that this is going to be his god? Rabbi Meir savar dibura milsi, Rabbi Meir says that the statement is significant and therefore chayiv. Rabbi Yehuda savar dibura lav milsi, but then Rabbi Yehuda, he holds no, that the statement is not significant, so this exact question that's being raised is actually a machlokas tanoim. But then the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yosef says lav milsi hidiyamri, what I'm saying is actually not true. Diafilu Rabbi Yehuda, because even according to Rabbi Yehuda, b'dibura nami chiyuv mechayev, speech alone is significant enough to make someone chayev. Tanya, as we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Yehuda says, "Liolam eino chayiv," a person is not liable ad sheyomar evod, until he says, "I'm going to serve," or "Eilech v'evod," I'm going to go and serve, or "Neilech v'navod," let's go and serve. And so you see, the statement alone actually is enough. And so then the question is, what exactly is the machlokas between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda with regards to this person who says that everyone should worship me? But my kamiflagi, what are they arguing about? What's the machlokas Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda? It's actually as follows: B'meises liatzmo. Let's say you have a situation where again a person is inciting others to worship himself. He wants them to worship him. V'amri lei, and then they say to him, they say the word, yes, we will worship. Kamiflagi, so that's the machlokas between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Mar savar meises liatzmo shamile. One says that when somebody is trying to incite others to worship himself, so then the people will listen to him. V'indaka amri lei kushto, and when they say yes, they mean it, they're saying the truth, and therefore we take that seriously. That's Rabbi Meir, that's why Rabbi Meir says chayiv. Umar savar, but the other one holds, Rabbi Yehuda holds meises liatzmo, when a person is trying to incite others to worship him, so lo shamile, so in such a situation, they're really not listening to him. Meimar amri, and they're certainly saying to themselves, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Aleph Amid Beis.